of the Abraham Accords Peace Insitute, Robert Greenway, just back from the United Arab Emirates, where you and a number of representatives from all the Abraham Accords nations kind of measured the progress of what's happened over the last year or so and planning as to how to extend these agreements and move forward on these normalization efforts. Can you give us an update on what transpired in the UAE?
First, we had intended since last year, really early on in the Accords, to have a meeting much like we executed in Abu Dhabi. The idea was to bring together the stakeholders, particularly from a trade and investment standpoint, and to fully integrate the parties. And I think we managed to accomplish that, and I'm grateful that we did. So we looked at the progress of the Accords, which is just short of $1.5 billion in annual trade increase between and among its members in a year, despite the coronavirus pandemic, and an enormous commitment to pursue strategic investment together as a result of it. And so I think bringing together the Accord member stakeholders from a trade and investment standpoint was an incredibly consequential meeting, in my judgment, probably the most important since the White House ceremony signing the Abraham Accords last year.
And you mentioned, this was really more of a measure of trade, of economy, of industry, more than anything else. What measurable progress, what measurable goals are you looking for at this point in terms of development with these nations?
Yeah, so I think it's a recognition, one, of what the economic potential is. We looked at the progress, and it's been spectacular, and in spite of difficult circumstances after only a year. But we also looked at the potential of integrating the economies between the Accord member nations, and also recognizing that the region sits between massive markets in Asia, Europe, and in the United States. And as a result, there's enormous economic potential, greater perhaps than most of us, I think, had realized. And so the goals become incredibly important. Having goals, of course, doesn't mean that you'll get there, but it certainly makes it a lot easier. And recognizing the economic potential is critical. So assembling a group of senior government officials who hold many of the important parameters of the infrastructure between the countries. Again, 127 memorandums of understanding between countries since the Abraham Accords have been established. And yet, there's more work to be done. Bringing together some of the most senior business leaders and executives across the Accords member nations, all of the sovereign wealth funds for the countries represented in the room, constituted, I think, an important agreement to pursue shared investment in strategic priorities, food security, for example, obviously water as a part of it. IT and tech innovation, without question, agricultural projects, but also infrastructure. We spent a good deal of time talking about improving transportation links between the countries to even further expand the trade that's taken place so far. But the idea to pursue shared investment priorities, I think, is enormously important when you consider the capabilities of each of the countries in question. That's incredibly significant.